So myself, Phoebe and Dave are back today with another webinar for you, all about desk setup and posture for those of you who might now be working at home. So just in case you didn't see our previous webinar on running, you should really go and check that out, but we'll also do a brief introduction now. So my name's Phoebe, I am the gym manager and one of the personal trainers at Sandown Sports Club in Esher, and I'm going to hand you over to Dave now, who's going to introduce himself.
Hi guys, I'm Dave. I'm Director of BODYMECHANICS Physiotherapy. I'm a sports science graduate who then became a physiotherapist. I love everything about movement. So we talked last time rather about running. Today we're going to talk about sitting posture. We're going to talk about desk setup. It's really important, particularly in these times. So I'm going to have a hand back over to Phoebe, who's going to go through a few things, and I'll follow up after.
Thanks, Dave. So the first thing I'm going to take you through today is going to be the importance of keeping yourself moving and keeping yourself kind of stretching and everything whilst you're working from home. So I imagine for a lot of you, you might be lucky enough to have a setup like this, a nice desk with your computer, but for those of you who don't, you might find yourself sitting in some weird positions and weird postures at the moment. For example, you might find yourself classic leaning forwards, the shoulders are rounded, that chin's tilted up, and you might be getting some aches and pains from this. You might be feeling really stiff throughout the day. Another common one that we might see is if your computer screen is here, but you might be twisting the body slightly, you might be putting yourself into some weird positions, crossing a leg over the other, and all of these positions, although it might feel comfortable at the time, probably aren't doing your body any good. So let's take probably the most common one, which is going to be this rounded shoulders and this forward head leaning posture. So the chin's going to be up, your neck in the back here is going to be quite tight, it's going to be quite sore. All the muscles through the front of the body are going to be really, really closed, and they're going to learn to stay in that position. So a great quote actually, or a great saying that Dave said in our running webinar is, you are what you do every day. And that couldn't be more accurate now that we're working from home. And we might be in these postures for a bit longer than we'd like to be. It might not be that different to if your desk setup is similar to that you had at work previously, but now's a great time to address it when you have a bit more time and a bit more freedom. So staying in this position for maybe even 8 hours a day, your body's going to learn to stay in this position. So when you then get up and try and move around, that's probably going to be reflected in your standing posture. You might notice that your shoulders are just creeping forwards even when you're stood up and you're moving around. This might be affecting your workouts, this might be affecting your seat positions, your general walking mechanics. It can affect a whole range of things, which is why it's really important to make a note of how you're sitting and kind of keep yourself moving, keep yourself stretching. I am going to take you through some stretching examples for these key areas that are getting a bit tight, but before we get into that, I'd like Dave to take you through some desk setup so that you can see where you might be going wrong.
Cool, thanks Phoebe. It's actually great to have an example in front of me as well. So when we look at a desk setup, there are the standard things. The monitor should be around about eye height. Yeah, so if I'm being a bit naughty and picking on Phoebe here, I would say, Phoebe, I'd really like you to raise that monitor up slightly, because at the moment, the way Phoebe's monitor is set up, she's going to be looking down. That's going to naturally bring her forwards into that bent forward position. And if you are in that bent forward position, as Phoebe's saying, the stress upper back into the neck is not ideal. Now, the next part of this is to say, well, what's happening with your arms? And the arms should be bent at 90 degrees. So the elbow should be at 90 degrees and the hand resting flat onto the desk. Now, this is the comfortable hanging position for the arm. If you're reaching forwards, and particularly if you're one side reaching forward for the mouse on one side, always reaching in one direction, you get overworking the musculature at the front of the system, particularly around the one shoulder, and that puts you into a bit of a skew. As Phoebe's saying, where lots of people are sitting in twisted setups in different places now, ideally you want to sit square on. You want to sit or stand square on. So this is my third part here, is the fact that sitting for any prolonged period of time just isn't nice for the body. If you can move around regularly, fantastic. If you have the opportunity to swap between sitting and standing, that's ideal. When we look at a sitting to standing position, we're sitting for a period of time and asking your body to fold into a sit position. If every half an hour you could say, do you know what, I can change my desk setup so that I'm standing, I can engage the muscles at the back, stand in a more open posture, allow the muscles at the front to lengthen out, so that just by changing the posture, it's already started to change the way you're utilising the musculature. The last section I'm going to very briefly talk about around setup, having talked about eye level with the monitor, having talked about elbows at 90 degrees when you're at the desk and hands flat onto the table, and having talked about changing from sitting to standing, is actually the mechanics of going into sitting. People don't think about this, but what happens, we get to work, we go, right, here's my chair, here's my desk setup, and you sort of plonk yourself straight down into the chair. The problem with that is it puts you in exactly the position that Phoebe just talked about. You drop your bottom into the chair, your bottom tucks under you slightly, the pelvis rotates backwards, and it naturally puts you into this position that you start to fold. The way we then counteract that is we say, oh, we have to sit up straight. So then we arch through the back, try and turn the big muscles on the low back area, and that just makes them sore over a period of time. Much better thought process is actually, how do I get my bottom into that chair? Because if you are sticking your bottom out slightly and aiming for the back of the chair with your butt cheeks, as your bottom hits the back of the chair and slides down, it naturally puts the pelvis into a position where you're putting weight through the sitting bones rather than putting weight through the fleshy area of your butt cheek. So there's a couple of things you can take away from me today. It's to make sure you keep moving around. If you can go from a sitting to a standing posture, that's great. If not, every half an hour, stand up, walk around, do some kind of movement, sit back down again. Phoebe's going to show you a little regime that you can do anyway. Number two, eye height. Make sure that computer screen is there at eye height, and make sure the arms are near to your body with the elbows at 90 degrees. But the key one will be, how do you sit? Because if you're not going to sit in a good position, any period of time sitting is going to be not so nice. We've got some articles on our website about how to sit and tests you can do to see if you're sitting well. So please go onto our website, have a download of them, and you can have a read at your leisure. But I'm going to now hand back to Phoebe, who's going to talk you through some exercise you can do to make sure you are moving. Because, Phoebe, you're right, you are what you do every day. The more you sit into that posture, the worse life's going to become.
That's great, thanks Dave. So these are some stretches and some sort of mobility exercises that I'm going to take you through that you can do from the comfort of your chair, at your desk. As Dave mentioned, it is really important to get up and move around at least once an hour, if not every half an hour, as he said. And these are just going to you can add these into that routine as well, perhaps every few hours before your lunch break, before your afternoon tea break at the end of the day, add these stretches in. So the first one, really common tight area that we get from that rounded shoulder posture is the chest muscles, the pectorals through the front here. They end up very tight and they like to pull those shoulders forward. So a great stretch to do. And this does work best if you have a back on your chair. If not, you can do this against a wall. The more forward you face, the more intense the stretch. So start slightly facing to the sides, and you're going to take your arms straight out behind you like so. From here, what you're going to do is gradually twist your body away. Keep your thumb and your palm facing up towards the ceiling as much as you can, and gently twist away. And you should feel this stretch all through the front of the shoulder and into the chest here. And you're going to hold these stretches for between 20 to 30 seconds at a time. I'm not going to hold it for that long today because I don't want to bore you. And then it's obviously important to do that on the other side as well. So just going to the other side of your chair, twist the body around slightly, and gently push that shoulder forward. It's important to try and keep the rest of the body square when you're doing this. So think about keeping your chest and your hips kind of in line as you're doing this one. Don't get the whole body twisting. Keep everything else in line. So that's going to work on that rounded shoulder posture. It's going to help to pull everything back. That next one is going to be your neck. So as we mentioned as well, you tend to lean forwards. All these muscles in the back of the neck tend to get a bit overworked. They get a bit stiff and a bit tight. So really simple stretch for this one is you're going to take your chin and you're going to tilt and look down towards your front pocket. You're just going to gradually look down towards that front pocket and taking your hand, just applying a very, very gentle amount of pressure. We never want to force anything with the neck, and with all of these stretches, they should never hurt. You just want a very mild stretch with them. So we're looking towards our front pocket, gently just applying that little bit of pressure, and you should feel a good stretch all through the side of the neck here and down into your traps and potentially into the upper back, depending on where you're a bit more tight. If you do want to intensify this, you can also place the other arm just behind on the low of your back with the palm facing inwards, and that will just intensify the stretch slightly. Again, of course, important to do both sides, like so. And now the next couple of exercises are going to really help you to loosen off your back, especially if you are sitting rounded, or like Dave said, you're overcompensated by now arching, and that lower back musculature is just taking over. It's getting really stiff, really tight, and it's not happy. These are not only sort of mobility exercises, but you can also use this as a bit of a test to see how one side compares to the other. And if one side is noticeably sort of stiffer or more uncomfortable than the other, or if you feel discomfort at all through these, then it might be time to seek some advice and get some more specific advice, as there might be something that needs working on, whether it's a little bit of a block in the muscle, a bit of a knot, or you've potentially been sitting twisted, something's a little bit out of balance. So that's when it would be a really good idea to get in touch with Dave or myself for a bit more advice. So the first one that we're going to go for is we're going to sit up nice and straight We're going to have our arms down by our side, making sure that our shoulders and hips are nice and square. Whilst keeping this nice square position, we're going to lift up and gently bend down to one side. We're reaching that hand as low as we can, not letting ourselves twist forwards or backwards, just gently tilting down to one side, keeping both sitting bones on the chair. So we want to make sure we're not lifting up on one side, we're keeping everything nice and neutral. From here, we're bringing it up and we're going over again to the other side. We're just seeing how far we can get comfortably. Again, no pain is good in these sorts of exercises. And you can see, can you get down much further on one side than the other? If so, then potentially you want to work on some more sort of lateral stretches. You can also do this with the arm up by the ear, just to add a bit more pressure and resistance to the stretch. And you should feel this all through the one side of your lower back. It's a really great stretch to do for the lower back. The next one that we're going to go for is more of an upper back thoracic rotation. So you're going to take your hands on your shoulders, lift those elbows up nice and high and squeeze those shoulder blades together behind you. And we're just going to sit towards the front of your chair so that you don't hit the back. And we're just going to gently twist from one side to the other. Just get everything moving. You might feel a little bit of discomfort towards the end, but again with these, it's not only getting the upper back moving, but you will also be able to notice if you can move one side a lot easier than the other. Again, that's something to look out for. And then that last one that I'm going to take you through, we're going to cross those hands over your chest, sitting up nice and straight, and just gently, slightly arching the back and just gently leaning back. Again, see how that feels. Is there any discomfort in the lower back, or can you quite smoothly lean back, just gently tilting the chin up? And again, it's going to get everything moving. It's going to let you know if there's any areas that might need a bit of work and just help you to get moving a bit more at your desk. Now I'm going to leave it at those because I don't want to overwhelm you with too many stretches. And one of the other really important things that's going to play a part in your desk setup and in your posture while you're sitting is actually going to be the chair that you're sitting on itself. So I'm going to hand you back over to Dave, who's going to talk to you about that.
Cool, thanks Phoebe. Great exercise. The more we move this, torso, this upper body, the more flex we get into the system, the happier the muscles become over a period of time. But actually, again, having talked about how you sit and actually get into a chair, the choice of chair you have is also important. Again, the desk setups we've seen recently doing more and more video consultations are dining room chairs, or chairs that people have just cobbled together in order to make a workspace in order they can work from home. Well, when you look at a chair and its relationship to the desk, what you want to look at actually is how well your hips move. Because if you're bending your hip up and it can only flex to a certain point, i.e. your knee can only come up so far before the bony areas stop you moving, then you want to look at how high the chair is relative to the floor. And that's going to dictate actually what height your desk setup should be. So with the chair, you want to have your hips very slightly above your knees to make sure that you're not hitting this point at which your hip bone comes up, stops at the pelvis, and that as it stops at the pelvis, it makes you flex through the low back and again predisposes you to this flex forward position. There is an easy test you can do to see how well your hips move, which is to lie on the floor and to bring the knee up towards you, have a look in a mirror and see how far that knee comes up towards you before it comes to a natural stop point. The natural stop point will be where the hip bone and the pelvis are moving together, the hip bone stops moving, and then the pelvis has to start moving instead. That degree of how far you move dictates actually how high the chair should be and whether you should have a wedge on the chair. So there are many, many people out there who won't have the degrees of movement in the hip, i.e. it can't get to a 90-degree position, in which case if you're sitting in a straight up and down chair, like a dining room chair, even most office chairs, then you're going to ask a question of the body that the body can't answer. You're going to ask the body to sit into a position the hip can't physically get into. And if it can't get into it, then you're going to compensate by using the low back, and that's going to predispose us to low back pain or upper back pain as the body compensates the position that your bottom has put itself into. If you can achieve a position, fantastic. If you can't, it's worth looking at buying a wedge, which is just a triangular shaped cushion, pop it onto the chair, give that a go, see how it feels, see how we can tolerate it. Once you have decided what position to sit in, referring back to earlier, make sure you're sitting on the sitting bones of your pelvis. If you're sitting on the fleshy part of your bottom cheeks, you're going to be rolled back on the pelvis. You're rolled back on the pelvis. The low back is going to be asked to bend in the wrong direction. You're not going to have an efficient weight loading through your bottom. So if you have sat down, you've thought to yourself, actually, I am a bit on the fleshy part, then what you can use is a postural trick that was taught to us a long time ago by my mentor, which is called the booty scooch. And the booty scooch is sitting in that position on the fleshy parts. You sit upright, you take the weight off of one side, put your hand underneath your butt cheek and physically slide it backwards so your back of your bottom cheek hits the back of the chair. Do the same on the opposite side, take your weight over, put the other hand under the bottom cheek, slide it backwards so again the back of the bottom cheek hits the chair. Now what's happened is the bottom's been relocated in the chair, so you've got weight going through the sitting bones of the pelvis, which is the best and most efficient way of transducing force through the spine into the chair. So make sure you think about what your chair is and how you're using the chair and how it relates to your hips, but also make sure you are getting your bottom into the right position of that chair. If you do these two things, you'll sit in what is the most efficient position. You'll be able to hold a sitting posture for a better period of time. But as we said before, please don't hold a sitting posture for any particular length of time, because the longer you sit for, the tighter you get, and the more of Phoebe's exercise you're going to have to do. But certainly those exercises are great. We want to get the body moving. If you are going to have to sit for any period of time, let's do it well. But if we are sitting for a period of time, make sure you get moving. Follow Phoebe's little protocol. I think we're all going to be in a much better position.
Yeah, I think that's just great advice for everybody. Hopefully you've all learned something today from this. And I mean, a lot of people nowadays, they have things like smartwatches. I know an Apple Watch, for example, gives me a reminder every hour to get up and walk around. So whether you have a smartwatch to give yourself a reminder, whether you set an alarm on your phone for every hour to get up and walk around, even if you just go and get a glass of water, that's doubling up 2 things that you should do in a day as well. Drink more water and get moving, stop sitting down for too long. So there's loads of ways around it. And those exercises are going to be great, especially at the end of the day, especially if you're then going to potentially go out on a run or go and do a workout at the end of your day, or even just before you get into bed, where again, you're going to be in sort of stuck in a still posture for quite a period of time. So hopefully you can take something away from today's discussion. And then obviously, as I mentioned, those stretches kind of work as slight tests a little bit as well. So if you are noticing any discomfort in the lower back, in the shoulders, anywhere in the body, then please do feel free to get in touch. If you're looking for some deeper stretching exercises or a slightly more advanced stretch and strengthening program, then please do get in touch as well. We are at your disposal. And I think that's all for today. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for joining me once again, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, Phoebe. And everybody, if you're going to have to sit, sit well.